Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. First item that we'll be addressing is a public hearing for the on-premises alcohol license requested by Red Tomato Pizza. We have it. There he is. Hi. Hello. If I'm correct, this was a
What is it?
That's Red Tomato Pizza.
complete alcohol, a full.
Full alcohol transfer license.
Okay. Oh, this is officially just transferring from the previous ownership?
Yes.
Okay. Anybody have any questions, or do you have any questions, Charlie?
No, just what are you planning to do, and
Just, serving the alcohol with, the meals and, the pizza.
Okay. Great. Guess I'd make a motion to accept the request.
second it?
Any further discussion? Call for a vote.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much, sir. Appreciate you taking the time to come out.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Okay. Did you have a chance to review the meeting minutes for February 19th and March 4th?
I did.
Do you have any comments or thoughts on it?
Everything looked okay.
They just need to be signed. Sign them that way.
Oh, the meeting minutes?
Yeah, we can do that later.
Well, technically, it's Greg's job, but we'll follow up, and we'll make sure someone does it.
Okay. I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes from February 19th and March 4th, 2019.
I second that. Any further discussion? All right, call for vote.
Aye.
Aye. Just because the next public hearing for liquor license was scheduled for 6:45, I'm just jumping into a couple items. We can keep going until then. Guess quick look at the wage authorization for Jared Markowski with the DPW. Just looking at it. Do we know, is this a new hire?
Yes, that's the one that was approved at the DPW commission meeting last week.
Okay. That's the first step in the
Yep,
classification plan?
Step one, yeah.
Oh, okay. Do you have any comments, Charlie?
No.
I'll make a motion to approve the wage authorization for hiring Jared Makowski as a DPW driver, skilled laborer, step one.
And I will second that.
Any further discussion?
Question,
Yes, Jack.
is there an amount associated with that wage or?
Yes, it would be $18.66 an hour, and the position is a 40-hour per week job.
Full benefits?
Yes. This is, I forget who they're replacing.
Jonathan Wheeler moved over to sewer, or water, sorry, water position, and he's taking that position.
Okay. So, you're welcome. Right. Did I call for this? Call for vote?
You have none. Aye.
Aye. All right. We have a use of town property by the Berry Farmers Market. May 4th through October 26th. Not the Folsom. This is the Berry Farmers Market looking to use the Common, I believe. So, the South Common, use Farmers Market. I don't see it written here, but it's usually every Saturday. What is it, 9 to noon?
Yes, 9 to noon. Did have the requested dates. First Saturday in May to last Saturday in October.
Okay. Do we want to make sure that we define certain hours for them? If that's the case, I'd probably suggest something like an 8 to 1 to allow setup and breakdown, but operating is 9 to noon. Is that-
Right here on the thing, 8 AM to the last statement,
Oh, that's a clarification saying what they are or are not allowed to do on the Common. And they're saying on Sundays from 8 to
Oh,
noon,
well,
they're not allowed to
okay.
have loud
Got the
music
wrong.
due to church activities, I believe.
Yeah.
So my recommendation is I'd make a motion to approve this based on accessible hours of 8 AM to 1 PM with operating hours of 9 AM to 12 noon.
I will second it with the provision that we have them provide the usual insurance policy, the liability policy.
Okay. Any further discussion? Call for a vote?
Aye.
Aye. So the two revisions were the hours and then the insurance policy. Use of town property. Quabbin Youth Football, looking to use Town Hall for a board meeting on April 2nd from 5 to 8 p.m. I have a motion.
I'll make a motion that we grant approval for the Quabbin Youth Football Cheering Association to use the town hall April 2nd from 5 to 8 p.m.
Okay. I would like to recommend waiving the $50 fee as it ultimately affects.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yes, so the benefit is minimal, but still worth offering. With that, I would second it, modifying that
I will agree to
motion.
that.
Any further discussion? Call for a vote.
Aye.
Aye. Still got 5 minutes. Oh, okay. Do we expect Eileen to be here for the?
I can
Okay.
just go over it. Yeah,
Let's open up that
Okay.
item then, and you can.
All right, yeah, so, for the age-friendly, dementia-friendly advisory committee, So one thing that we're working on is trying to make the town of Barry a age-friendly and dementia-friendly community. Going through some of the application forms for it, it seems clear that there needs to be a plan in place for the town as far as how it's going to achieve the goals put forward. And it's more than just one person can do and just write down and say, yeah, that's what the town needs. So the first step in really going toward becoming an age-friendly community is to form a committee who would kind of be the steering committee toward generating the recommendations that would go into the plan of action. And I provided you guys this Dementia-Friendly Communities Toolkit, and then sent you guys a link about the age-friendly stuff through AARP. So I gave you guys a draft of a charge for a committee, for an age-friendly committee, just kind of standard boilerplate stuff, just to kind of get discussion going. I expected that it's when we finally talked about when we got the two boards together to finalize the revision to the contract, we could maybe do a little bit more on a final, but want to at least get this in front of you guys for comment and markup before getting to that point.
Okay. Reviewing this, the first item I have would relate to item number 6 on the charge. The committee, the way it reads, the committee may form subcommittees concerned with health and human services, transportation, housing, library, social partnerships, or others if they are needed. The committee will recruit members for the subcommittees. I think we just need to put clarification there that any subcommittee or recruited member still needs to come before the Board of Selectmen to be approved to be appointed on the committee. Otherwise, we'd need to probably rewrite this as a bylaw and officially create it so that they're no longer answering to us.
Yeah, no problem. So the original wording from this was taken from a much larger community, so.
Yeah. Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
But generally, I like the concept. I do think, I'll let Charlie speak after me in just a sec, but I just probably not take any action on this tonight until we can get some comments back from Greg.
And I said I just wanted to get this, into your consideration for now, to let you know that it's something that we're working on. It's going to take further action, but just to kind of lay the groundwork toward getting a committee together to look at this.
I just have one question. The work of the subcommittees, do we need to have it specified that it would be their work when upon whatever the task was has to be approved by the full committee? Just to clarify it, or should be okay without that?
I can add that in under 6.
You know what I'm
that's fine.
driving
Yeah.
at.
I mean, generally, I think 6
Keep
might be a
them
little
all
bit.
You're going in the
Similar
same
direction,
direction.
I think 6 in general might be a little bit overblown for the size of a committee you're really looking for, related to the town's needs. So it could be something that you just leave out entirely, number 6, and just say if there is a need for a subcommittee, you review that, or subcommittees to the full committee, then you review that in the future.
Yeah, and I can see what you're saying. It's almost like a tweener town city type build where you're trying to create a department of volunteers.
Right. Yeah, it might be. Yeah, I'm sure you'll probably end up with the same core, 5 to 7 people that are going to probably work on 90% of the things, but there just might be a need to specialize in certain areas, but they'll probably end up taking on those tasks themselves if you can get enough people.
Anybody in the crowd have thoughts on building a age-friendly committee that focuses more on like elder services, assistance, helping human services type programs that the town might be able to start working towards? You can either speak up now or just keep it in mind, because I do expect we'll put it on the agenda again for the next meeting in April, or the meeting after that, depending on how busy the agenda gets.
Is this affiliation going to provide the town with any additional benefits, either financially or
It opens the
aesthetically,
doors,
or-
but there's no guarantee.
Excuse me?
It opens the doors for more grant opportunities, but there's no guarantee we'll get them depending on how effective we are.
So the reason you're establishing a committee is to open the door for more grant operations? Is that the linkage?
Right.
That
Yeah.
we're speaking about?
Yeah,
Okay, I was just
that's-
wondering.
Yes, but not the sole reason. It's also supposed to actually help. In this case, my guess is it helps Eileen because there's only so much she can do. So outside of Council on Aging, now she has another group that's trying to help work on these policy developments or these. So it's not just that, it's also seeing who can come in to help the town take those next steps. So it's not just because there's a committee, we can do it. Well, we still need people to help gather the information for grants. We still need people to help gather the needs of the town, you know, to outreach and pull information back. So I think it's, I don't want to say it's just about getting grant money, because I think that would be unfair to everything else we'd be asking of them. Yes, Chuck?
You're talking about the senior center. We have a lot of people from Hardwick now coming to our senior center. Do we need to make this information available to the Hardwick Board of Selectmen so they could do something?
It's a good question. We can,
Or
Bring it
just
up,
let them
yeah.
know what we're doing.
I don't disagree with that.
Yeah.
I'll have to ask Andrew to talk with Eileen to find out how much we've already done that or not, or what the thought is.
So the next step would be, we actually had that meeting where both boards are here to discuss the revised funding agreement. So that way we can discuss this at the same time.
It's just a thought.
And it's not a bad thought. Yeah. Yes, Jack?
Would this program be being discussed if there was no possibility of grant money?
I believe it might have been, but I can't answer that because it was brought to our attention with that included.
Thank you.
All right. I'd like to table this for the rest of now. We'll get back to it in future meetings. It was a good start just to bring up the topic. We're 5 minutes late on the last public hearing posted, so what I'd like to do is jump back to that. This is an off-premises wine and malt liquor license requested by Folsom Farmers Market. If you'd like to come up. Go ahead. Yeah.
Sit in the hot seat.
Okay.
So, like to introduce yourself?
All right, my name is Sarah Thorne, and I am with Folsom Farmers Market. I am the owner
Okay.
of it, so.
Right then. And what's your goal or desire with this liquor license?
All right, so the Folsom Farmers Market business plan is to expand the store's product offering in order to create a draw to new customers and create a destination for local and specialty items. Now, local tea, specialty wine, and malt beverages from only New England farm wineries and farm brewers, and that they produce no more than 45,000 cases of wine per year and 25,000 barrels of beer per year. And we will be utilizing no more than 2%, which is 250 square feet of the store's square footage for wine and malt beverage sales.
Okay.
And then,
Anybody have any questions?
Where is this farmer's market?
It's formerly known as Berry Foods.
yes.
Oh.
Or IGA.
Yep.
Oh,
Or-
I see. Okay, I
Yeah.
wasn't sure. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Didn't they used to sell beer
Yes.
at the store
They did.
years ago now?
I don't know, no?
Yeah, there used to be a doorway between that and the place next door, and that used to be beer and wine in there.
Yep, so,
Okay. So the-
Dementia, I do remember
That
that.
was before me.
I do remember
Is that the,
I'd forgotten about
the empty space that was the consignment shop? Was that, or was it a florist? That little space that's right next to the?
Yeah, they used to sell it in there, years ago.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I do remember that. I'd forgotten about that.
Yeah. I think when Capolino said,
Do you have any further questions?
Yeah, I don't think we want to tie you down to the space and stuff that you stated, that may be your goal, but, or the type of alcohol you're selling, it's up to you.
Yeah,
I understand your goal now, but we'll just leave it open.
okay, all right.
Yeah.
I know we haven't really, well, my husband's taking care of like this section of the
Mhm.
business, so
Mhm.
Okay.
we're excited.
No, it'll be nice.
Okay.
And,
I'll make a motion that we grant a license permit to Folsom Foods, Folsom Farmers Market.
any further discussion? All right, we'll call for a vote.
Aye.
Aye. Done.
Awesome.
Thank you very
so
much. You got it.
It's a pleasure, thank you.
Good for you.
Thank you. Yay.
All right, I would like to take this moment to give the town a little bit of an update. I know there are many people in town that are curious as to what we have or have not been doing to address some of the issues that have been raised about Stetson School. Chief of Police, myself, and Andrew all met with 4 members of Seven Hills, 3 of them I believe more directly related to the management of Stetson, 2 members of Department of Children and Families, Senator Goby, Representative Berthium, and I believe that covers everybody that was in the room. Last Tuesday evening to raise and discuss our concerns. In general, there were 2 things that I believe we focused on. One is the bigger issue, and that's what is preventing Seven Hills from keeping the students from getting away from the site. That was the bigger one. Why can't you contain them? Why isn't your supervision good enough to prevent the elopements? Some of the responses were regarding the state regulations involved with their ability to restrain youths. Not everything about that is as cut and dry as you'd like. As much as you want, the regulations aren't written quite as cut and dry, so there's a lot of levels of interpretation, whether it's Department of Children and Families, whether it's Seven Hills interpreting that regulation, whether it's our police department interpreting that. But what it really comes down to is they do everything they can to prevent putting their hands on a youth until it's absolutely necessary. So that means technically, if they've got eyes on site, they'll follow them to Hardwick and back. Some of that I do understand. Certain youths, they're just walking to let off steam, and as they're doing it, they're going through everything in their head, and it's kind of just giving them a chance to figure out what was going on. They've got a lot going on. They've come through a lot. They're there for a reason. But some of them, despite all of that, I am not blaming any of the students. I'm not saying these students are the problem. I don't think anybody from this town has been pointing at the students themselves or the youths as the problem. I think that got lost in the communication over the last year, year and a half, whether it was from what Stetson heard when we spoke and how they responded, or when you get into Facebook comments and everybody else in town speaking what they thought about it, it kind of muddied the waters. And so what we tried to do at the Tuesday meeting is get back to, what are you doing to keep them on your own property? And when you can't, what are you doing to communicate with your neighbors in the community so that we know when they leave, we know why they left, we know if they're there, whether they're a danger or not. We had a lot of really good support from Senator Goby and Donnie Berthium, who really placed this whole issue kind of on Seven Hills' shoulders regarding their ability or lack of ability to do a better job with keeping everybody on site. And if that didn't happen, their ability then to properly communicate it. I do believe some from Seven Hills showed a certain level of desire to better their relationship with the community. Try to create more of an open door policy where people can actually reach out to them with their concerns, or even if it's immediate concerns, possibly reach out to them and say, I see a kid in my backyard, is this one of your kids? Kind of get back to the I'm your neighbor, you're my neighbor, let's look out for each other, where you can pick up the phone and feel confident that the answer is going to be truthful. So I know that that was on the table, and it sounded like there was a desire to reach that level, which makes me hopeful. Only time is going to tell if this meeting or anything thereafter is actually going to make a difference. So nothing out of that meeting am I going to come to you and say, it looks like we're going in the right direction. I hope we are. I do believe that it sounded like a couple of the people in the room actually were sincere in their desire to make things better. I think some people felt like the regulations they had to work within made it very difficult to do what they think we are asking them to do. I don't want to say they're wrong, but I do think that they may need to reevaluate their policies and recognize that there's more they can do, that they aren't doing everything they can, they're just doing everything they thought they could, but the community is saying you got to do more, and they actually have rights to do more, and they just got to figure out how to do that. We re-emphasized the communication between the police department and Stetson when people leave. We really forced the situation when we brought up that outside of a youth eloping, but staying on public rights of way, the minute they get on private property, we reinforce the fact that they don't have rights to do that. But there are certain legal limits where they're also not legally prevented from doing that unless everybody in the town has no trespassing signs along every border that they have. Just in case they walk on, they could say, we told you not to. We are trying to do our best to not have to work with every bordering parcel on that property and put up no trespassing signs just to make our point. But we told them that we may consider, as a town entity, as a municipal government, looking at ways of helping fund and teach all of the abutters to the property what it would take to put the signs up, get them up so they have the proper information. So if at any time someone does cross into their private property, they have the right to pick up the phone and call the police and say someone's trespassing. We don't want to go there if we can help it. That means we have totally lost the option of building the bridge and working together and making them feel like they can be a part of the community, like they know that Stetson home many years ago was. And from my understanding, many years ago, it even goes prior to Seven Hills. It goes way back before like 1990 when people actually had trust in those that were on the board and running the place. But I think trust started to deteriorate in the 90s at some point. Some decision was made that I was told about that slowly made it less and less. So there's very little trust, from my understanding, from those that are around about what Stetson will tell them if they picked up the phone and told them. So in my opinion, no matter what, it's going to take time for us to get through this, no matter how quickly Seven Hills responds to our requests. I just wanted you to know we did take the time to sit with them. We did set it up so that we would have a follow-up meeting no later than June to see if any progress has been made on some of these items. And similarly, we had strong support from our state representatives, expecting positive efforts. So there you go. I just wanted to give you a quick update. I don't have a lot more to say, but go ahead, Sam.
During this time that we're trying to work it out with them, we have to put a lot of police and fire services over there. I spoke with the chief of fire, and he explained to me how much time that he has to spend over there with the ambulances, fire trucks, and all the stuff that they have to do according to the rules and regs. It's costing us a lot of money. I think we need to figure out a way to be reimbursed from the organization until this gets resolved. I mean, we can talk about it.
That was also raised at the meeting, and that was one of the things I asked our senator and representative to understand, especially when homes like this are placed into rural areas where a lot of these public services create a bigger impact to the town's budget than if it was in a larger community, say like Worcester. Now, Worcester is an extreme example because it is the second largest city in New England. But when you start getting up into the 50,000 or higher populations, the impact of these places on your public safety is less than when you only got 5,000 homes, 3,000 plus registered voters. It's a different story, and the impact is greater. And so we brought it up to them because this, as you're saying, but this is all regulated at the state level. We have very little strength in this. We can cry and cry and cry and yell and yell and yell, but unless we actually have support from state representatives to make changes, we're not going to get assistance from the state for funding. That's my understanding. Yes, Sam.
Well, I wasn't talking about from the state. There's a school here, Charlie knows the name of it, I recall. Fernal, or anyway.
The Devereaux School.
excuse me.
Devereaux.
And they pay money. And
They're not managed by Seven Hills.
I know that, but they pay money.
They weren't forced to, they offered to.
Right, I know that, but they still do. Now, I'd like to tell you guys a quick.
I'm
story.
asking you, how does that relate to what we're doing?
Well, if they do it, I think there's those reason that we need to put pressure on these people so that they need to do it until they get their act together.
But you're misunderstanding what I just said. We have spent 1.5 years putting pressure on them. It's done nothing.
I'll tell you, if I knew the answer, I'd be telling you, but I'd like to tell you a quick story about something like this.
You have 20 seconds.
Thank you. I was contacted by people who want to come into Barry and live. And they said, before they signed the contract, they asked me about what's happening in Barry. It's supposed to be a nice a town, and I work during the day, and I'm home all night, and my husband works at night, and he's home all day, and should I be afraid as a single person to live here?
I got your point, and I recognize what you're trying to say.
Okay, so I'm asking.
This is impacting the ability to have people live here, want to stay here, or not move out. Move in or not move out. That is not something I disagree with at all.
Thank you.
I have had similar comments from people that live on Stetson saying once they moved into it, they did not expect what they got. It doesn't mean that I've heard from them that they are going to leave, but I definitely know that they said this is not what I expected. So I don't disagree at all, and I do think that's a major point we're trying to, and it's another reason why this is not something that the Board of Selectmen are sleeping on or doing nothing about. There's just not a lot more I can say about what we're doing.
Thank you, as long as you know. Thank you.
Dennis?
May I make a suggestion?
Yes, sir.
Why don't we invite the Board of Directors of Seven Hills to meet with the town of Barry's residents at the town hall or at Rubbers Lane School, and let the people of Barry speak directly to them.
That was discussed. I will tell you this. The first question we asked Stetson, well, Seven Hills, when we sat at that table is, what do you believe are the concerns of the town? The answer immediately went to describing the concerns as overinflated or potential hyperbole versus identifying the answer of what are the concerns.
Because of Facebook.
So what I believe, I haven't had a chance to talk to Charlie or Greg, so I need to make sure I clarify this. What I believe is they're not ready to have that meeting. So we're asking them to come back to us and explain what they understand, and then now they have started reaching out to private individuals, and I know at least one that they have met with, and I have talked to that individual after they met with Seven Hills. So some of them, I think, are actually looking to better understand it. I'm still not certain if they're actually looking to better understand it because they want to resolve it, or better understand it so they can undermine it so it's no longer a public relations issue. And because of that, representing the town, I don't want to offer that because it would almost sound like I think we're ready, like we're making the right move in the right direction, and I'm not confident we are yet. So I didn't want to offer, hey, let's have a meeting at town hall, come listen to the community, because they should have asked us. And I don't think they really asked that.
They don't want to hear it.
So until it's initiated from them, I'm afraid that we're just pushing it on them. They'll do the, I showed up, I listened, walk away, and then continue to build their defense as to why what they're doing is still okay and it's fine and we should just quit crying about it or talking about it. Or I think a lot of the discussion did bother me about it's more about how we're portrayed than the actual issues going on. And I don't disagree that some, especially, we all know Facebook.
Oh, yeah.
If you start reading the comments, yeah, it's going to go extreme in both directions. There are some people on Facebook that pretty much will defend everything going on at Stetson because they truly care about the youth and they don't want it to come off as if the youths are the problem. But then there are other people that say the youths are the problem and Seven Hills is even more of the problem. So I agree. Facebook gets the opinions out there, and I would actually recommend take a look, read them. But try not to get stuck on any one side of that issue because they are extreme. I just personally believe that we got a few more steps to take, but I think the town should sponsor any type of, or initiate any type of meet the public type meeting. Charlie?
Yeah, I think, Mr. Chairman, as a follow-up to Dennis's comment, we have reached out, this board has reached out repeatedly and asked them to attend our meetings, or we would be willing as a board to go up there, and they don't want to do that. I don't know what the reason is. I assume because it's a public meeting, and if the board were there, it constitutes a public meeting, and they don't want to be part of that, I guess. I don't know, that's my only guess, but...
It may, Charlie, it may just be them admitting by coming, there's a problem.
Yeah, I don't know. We're not looking, I think, you know, speaking for myself, because we haven't really discussed it too much, but I don't think if they were to come into a meeting with the board or something, that we would be there to embarrass them or anything else. It would be strictly a business-like meeting, but I find that very frustrating. I attended a similar meeting about a year ago.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
This time, may have been a little earlier in the winter,
I think it
but.
might have been, yeah, like in
Yeah,
January.
yeah, the same, with the exception of children and families, pretty much the same cast of characters was there. And we had tried to hope to resolve some things. It sounds like they made more progress than we did a year ago, but,
Well, it's taken how many years from them being a boys' home, quasi-orphanage, to what it is today, which is completely different.
oh, it's a lot
taken
different.
that time to get to this point, take a little longer.
Yeah.
Jack?
And a question and a brief comment. What are the details of the pilot program that Stetson has with the town?
Non-existent. It was a one-time pilot just to transfer the land for the public safety building. It's not an annual reoccurring pilot.
Was there an understanding when that donation of the land was given?
You'd have to ask the previous boards of selectmen that were on the board at the time.
Okay.
Because I don't think we have anything in writing that leads to any type of understanding.
And a brief comment. The character of Stetson School has changed dramatically since 1899, when they said that they had a partnership with the town. There was a major change maybe 10 years ago with the Department of Agriculture. Took away the certification or something like that from the Stetson School. Their enrollment had dwindled quite severely. And it's a completely different situation now. There's almost no relation to what it was 10 or 20 years ago. And the other thing I want to say is, I doubt there would be any elopements if there was a $50,000 fine per elopement.
Good for you.
That would get their attention.
That's the best idea I heard all day.
I'm going there. Oh, I know.
I understand your point. Anybody else? I do have another meeting that's about 15 minutes late now, so I should jump back on. This was somewhat of a filler, just to try to make sure that we had taken the time to give you an update. We are making efforts, we're trying to get somewhere, but I definitely have no concrete thing to say about have we made progress.
Has anybody explained to Stetson that there's a real possibility that one of these kids would get shot for breaking into somebody's house?
That was specifically identified during the meeting. We called that out. We also called out the fact that one of your youth stole a car. That youth was a couple years younger than the driving age and made it to a whole nother town. So just that itself is its own danger to the youth as well as to anybody on the road. Not every youth would fail to know how to drive, but it implies there was plenty of danger involved, as well as the emotions involved in that youth. Just to get into a car, steal it, and run means they're probably not in their best mindset at the time. But yes, we definitely brought up the fact that someone goes into another property, starts stealing stuff. There are people that have the right and will follow through with that right to protect their property, and they need to be aware of that. Don't assume that that won't happen just because you're hopeful. Just like we should not assume that something won't happen when a youth walks away just because you're hoping that how you saw him earlier today is how he's going to react later in the day. It doesn't always work that way, especially if you're dealing with people that are troubled. I mean, they're there for a reason. They're trying to get better. They're trying to get through some of the things that happened in life. But they're there because they know they can't do it alone. I think right now that's all we have, unless you have something to add, Charlie, on this subject.
No.
There's a lot more to come. A lot more things are going on with this, but I have no clue when that timetable will actually happen. Moving on from that, let's get back to the 7 o'clock host community agreement public hearing. Come on up, any and all. Actually, what I'd like to do is give myself 2 minutes. I'll be right back. But feel free to get comfy in your chairs. not gonna change the agenda in a moment.
Thank you.
Crazy. Keep looking at it.
Just before I get too deep into this, Charlie or Andrew, this being a public hearing, is there a certain way I should technically open this so that I'm following the rules and
Probably
regs?
read the public hearing notice and then.
Thank you.
You have a copy of it.
That's a good question.
I just noticed it wasn't in mine, so I don't pull it up.
Well, I don't have the public hearing
got it
notice.
here.
Oh, okay. Alright. Town of Perry has called a public hearing for a host community agreement with Castle Rock Agricultural Enterprises, Inc. Take notice, the Board of Selectmen will conduct a public hearing on Monday, March 18th, 2019 at 7 p.m. in the Selectmen's Meeting Room, Henry Woods Building, 40 West Street, Berry, Mass. For the purpose of reviewing the host community agreement proposal for outdoor marijuana cultivation at 257 Walnut Hill Road by Castle Rock Agricultural Enterprises, Inc. Persons wishing to comment may do so at this time. The board will also consider written comments received prior to the hearing. The meeting room is handicap accessible. Persons requiring reasonable accommodation should contact the town administrator's office in advance. For the Board of Selectmen, Andrew M. Golos, town administrator. We will call the meeting open. This is the third time, actually, Castle Rock has sat in front of the Board of Selectmen. The first time introduced the idea. The second time actually was a little bit of the same, but we had invited the planning board in to listen. And now this is the first of two public hearings that the Board of Selectmen have chosen to make in line with our originally proposed general bylaw that would mandate that the Board of Selectmen has a minimum of two public hearings for any marijuana host community agreement request. The state requires one for transparency and consideration to help prevent the concept of fast tracking something. We wanted to make sure two public hearings were made so that the town had the chance to hear it and actually be involved in the process. So this is the first of two public hearings that we will be working on. I would like to give the floor to Castle Rock. Please introduce yourselves and give a quick little spiel to the public.
Thank you. My name's Tom Egan. I am the CEO of Castle Rock Agricultural Enterprises. I live at 257 Walnut Hill Road here in Barry with my wife, 2 of our 4 kids, and 2 dogs. We've come to the town with a host community agreement proposal. We hope to be outdoor cultivators of marijuana on 2.3 acres of our land, or 100,000 square feet. That's out of 134 acres total. That ends up being something like 1.7% of our land. The area where we actually want to grow marijuana is a disused, overgrown hayfield, which is actually deep in the woods. In the audience, I do see some of my neighbors who know the land better than I do, and they know exactly where the parcel is. We realized that we could do this there, and people will not see us, they will not hear us, they will not smell it, and we can keep it secure. It is growing marijuana only for wholesale. There will be no retail component at all. We will need employees. Our plan is to, as much as we can, hire people from Barry to work for us and pay them a decent wage. And we hope, number one, to absolutely not be a nuisance of any kind to this town, not put anybody in jeopardy or annoy anyone, and hopefully be a benefit to the town by paying the associated taxes and fees, but also increase real estate taxes, and if our business is successful, do some nice things for the town. And I'm here to answer any questions or address any concerns that people might have. And I've also said at the other 2 previous appearances here, my wife and I are absolutely willing to talk to anyone in town in person. Come to our house, sit at our dining room table. We'll take you out and show you the site where we want to do this, because we're committed to doing this right. We live here. My kids go to Ruggles Lane. We have to do this right, or we're not going to survive in our own town. And my wife and I brought our kids to Barry from Worcester because we wanted to raise our kids in a town like Barry. We didn't actually come here with the idea of growing marijuana. We discovered after the fact that we might be able to do this, and we decided to pursue it. But, you know, my family's safety is paramount, and by extension, so is the town's. And I'm here to answer any questions or address any concerns you might have. Yes, sir.
What taxes and fees do you...
Sorry, guys, just to clarify during this process, please raise your hand, wait for me to let you know that you have the floor, ask the question to me, and then I'll bring it to the attention of that person that can answer the question. Go ahead, Jeff.
Thank you. What taxes and fees you alluded to do you anticipate the town of Barry receiving when you're up and running?
So if you look at the way the whole industry is set up on a state level, a host community can expect a certain percentage of the revenue stream of the business, which is 3%. That's by law what the community can expect, but a business can do more than that in other ways.
Follow-up? Could you put a number on that?
Hard to do so because it really depends on what our gross revenue is going to be, and there's different ways to do marijuana, and the vast majority of cultivation being done in the state is indoors. And there's a reason for that. It's because people realize that indoors they can control for all of the variables, whereas what we're gonna be doing is essentially farming it. So we have weather risk, we have pest risk. So I think it would be a very healthy number, but until we have our first season of growing, I can't tell you what the number would be.
How can you have
Jack.
a business if you don't know how much business you're gonna be doing?
Well,
Sorry, Tom.
sure.
They have offered to pay the town the maximum the town can ask for according to state law. At that point, their success or failure is based on their own business model. I am not well, go ahead. You can ask the question, but after this, I would like to make sure the floor is available to others. I don't want to get too far into their business model and financial expectations.
Well, I wouldn't think that the amount of money that they're gonna generate is a condition of their approval. But you've got to have some kind of a number. Is it 1,000 or 20,000?
It would be higher than that, I would
Higher than
expect.
20,000, thank you.
Could I have one more thing, sir? In our proposed host community agreement, we volunteered audited financial statements to the town on an annual basis, so the town will know that it is getting the appropriate amount of money that it expects and deserves.
Any other questions?
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
I'm Tim Messer. Hey, Doc. I live right up the street from you, just back from deployment. We haven't met.
Yes, my wife,
Pleasure to meet you.
recently.
I have a question of you say you're gonna do a little over 2 acres. What kind of infrastructure do you see going up to that field? I mean, I don't know how.
Are you familiar with where it is?
Yes, no, actually, I'm not.
So, for the rest of the room, some people in the room know the actual land. So, the bigger hayfield, way in
Does
the
this help,
woods
sir?
behind the hayfield, is where we would be. There's a disused field, hundreds of yards up in there.
Is this meeting actually monitored by Rich while he's doing
Being
this?
here, but this is the area that
If
we
we hold that up,
This
can
is
we zoom
actually
the camera in and back out if you want?
but
I don't know if the clarity is good.
So just talk about putting a trail and get a truck in there.
So there are bar roads existing that can get you up in there. And we would have to widen them, make them so that.
Right, well,
Yeah.
But I don't know how much yield 2 acres, like I'm sure it's more than a couple of tons. Like I don't know how many ton it is to
It's,
get in and get out.
So, again, not really going into our overall projections because they are kind of nebulous at this point, but in a growing season, in a bad year, I think you could expect at least 1,000 pounds of marijuana. But if you think about it, physically, that 1,000 pounds isn't gonna fill this room. And again, there's a lot of differences between indoor and outdoor growing. Depending on the variety of marijuana you choose to grow outdoors in New England, at most, you're gonna get 2 crops in a growing season. Whereas the majority of operations in the state are indoors, and they manage the life cycle of the plant a different way, and they can get 10, 12 crops a year. So they're constantly putting crop out. Whereas, again, I make the analogy to more traditional farming. we're gonna harvest once, maybe twice a year.
And can I do follow-up?
Yes, sir.
In security, I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of enterprising young lads and lasses that are going
Yeah.
to wind of.
Absolutely.
As far as trekking through the backwoods, I mean, is it security wire, security fence, or cameras?
So, like, it's gonna be fenced, but it's not gonna be a standard chain link fence. I mean, given the nature of what we're growing, the value of it, and the fact that it will attract people, or it could, we're talking more like military installation or prison grade, like really high, thick, cut, incline fencing, cameras. What's that?
I'm just showing you examples they submitted. These are not,
Correct.
they are not saying this is exactly. They were just provided in the pamphlet as an example of what they would be looking at for security.
And, there's different, I think, different ways to approach security, and some people think like your security measures should be secretive. Ours are gonna be in your face. So do I expect initially maybe some kids will come out there on quads with a ladder or something and say, oh. But once they see it, they're gonna be like, no. And again, I would emphasize, we live there. You live next door. I'm not gonna risk my safety, I'm not gonna risk your safety, and I would not be, we haven't worked through the numbers to that degree yet, but I would not be surprised if, for us, security is the biggest part of our startup costs, because it has to be perfect.
Okay. Nice to meet you.
You too, sir.
Thank you for your time.
Thanks for
Thank
coming.
you. Yes, Dennis?
Have you done soil samples of the proposed area?
If you mean to, like, a very intense degree of, like, what's the soil consist of? No. But we did, when we bought the property, we had a forestry management plan done. And the forester looked at the soils all over the property. There's actually, from a plant or a botanical perspective, it's actually 5 different forests on one piece of land. And I can provide you with more information about that. But that particular spot is very rich soil.
Well, the only reason I bring that up is cannabis is an extremely absorbent plant. And if there was anything buried up in the ground up there, it's gonna pull that out. It would behoove you, and I'm not telling you your business.
No, I understand. It's on the agenda. I mean, there's a lot of things sort of downstream planning to go, but the first step is a host community agreement. I can't go and get a license and then come back to you on the planning board for zoning permits without a host community agreement. So we know to a certain level some things, but there's a level of detail that until we get a host community agreement, it doesn't make sense to get there yet.
Yes, sir.
I wondered what the planning board, if they had some kind of input on this, and whether there was any regulations they had drawn up in the past regarding outside growing of cannabis. And also, I also wondered, is all the property posted, or will it just be the area that you're going to grow the cannabis in?
I'm not sure what you mean by posted, sir.
Well, we'll say you had some sportsmen around there, maybe hunting deer or turkeys or something. Would it be posted for them in part of your property?
You mean like no more hunting?
Yeah.
No. People have hunted on that property forever.
Well, that's what I thought.
And other than please don't shoot through the fence and
Yeah, right.
kill my plants.
Yeah.
I don't expect, I'm not gonna change that. In fact, my neighbors have offered to teach my son to hunt.
Sure.
So, no, if that's
Great.
what you're asking me, sir, no, that's not gonna change.
Very good.
Regarding the first couple questions, we've invited the planning board to review this and kind of hope that they might identify anything that they normally would identify under a special permit granting authority role under a zoning bylaw, so that we could incorporate anything that they might have to say into the host community agreement, so that Castle Rock Industries would know what the town is going to ask of them that isn't in a prescriptive bylaw. So they know if they even want to go to the state and apply for the cannabis license from the Cannabis Commission before coming back and then sitting before the planning board to find out that the planning board says, well, now you got to do this, this, and this. It's part of a balance that we've been trying to work out with the planning board without undermining the strength of the town. That was never our intent. So this is us just working and asking them as a practice, because right now we have no laws in place. So we're acting, the Board of Selectmen are kind of acting on what we propose in the general bylaw, and we're asking the planning board, who had proposed a zoning bylaw, to take those parts of the zoning bylaw that would be considered, I guess, subjective, and bring it to the host community process so that we can close the loop there, and then anything prescriptive is known by any developer that might want to do any type of business before having to come back before the planning board after the steps to get to the state and back. It's not to take away that strength of the planning board, it's just to incorporate it at an earlier stage in the process. So that's what we had asked. Members of the planning board have participated in the last couple meetings. So we'll see where that goes. And I'm not asking Dennis to try to answer on that. I'm just saying that from the Board of Selectmen's position, Ron, they did have a zoning bylaw, they did propose, so there was certain language they were asking for at the time. But I'll let Dennis, if he would like to, answer any more about what the planning board may or may not want to have zoning bylaws related to outdoor cultivation.
I don't want to overstep my bounds, I'm not the chairman.
Understood? Good enough. So there are published that were previously presented to the town. So I'll do the same as Dennis, and I'll wait for them to have a chance to tell us if they've modified their opinion on those or not. Yes, sir.
Yes, I'm Raymond Lindsay from Walnut Hill Road. I'm Tom's neighbor, and we abut his land. And the piece of land that he's talking about is more or less in the middle of his property. It's probably as close to any border, you know. And there's other people there who are in support of him. I think everybody deserves a chance. It's got to be the way of the things are going today, you know. So, and I think it's great if we can start making the land produce something, you know.
I appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Lindsay.
Thank you, sir.
Yes.
It sounds like that things are still up in the air as far as the zoning bylaws and that sort of thing. So I suspect I know the answer to my question, but in the event that you have a very successful enterprise with the amount of land that you're seeking to cultivate now, what would your expansion plans be, and what kind of rules would there be around getting approval from the town, et cetera?
There would be no expansion plans ever, and you don't have to take my word for that. If you look into the state's licensing structure, they have tiers based on square footage of canopy. And because we have all that space out there. We went for, by the state level, a really large, the largest area you can have. And the way the state regulates the licenses, if they grant us that level of license, that's it. There is no more expansion in Barry, and there's no more expansion for our company growing anything anywhere else in Massachusetts because the license is maxed out. And that 100,000 square feet, that's it. There is no opportunity for expansion by state law. And if I could go a little further, one of our goals, if we get to do this, when we bought the land, I made a handshake promise to the people that I bought the land from that I wouldn't just clear cut it and develop it. And if I can do this with 100,000 square feet of land surrounded, the area that will fence off will be more like 5 acres. But if I can do that, then I can go back to the land management plan that the forester created for us. Like, our forest out there, it needs work. There's things that we can do to make the forest healthier, to make hunting better, actually, out there. And if we do this with a small piece of our land, then the rest of it stays as it is, and generally we work on improving it. So that's one of our overall goals.
We have any more questions? I have one question.
Yes, sir.
In the proposed host community agreement, looking to see if you would be opposed to identifying the license classification that you're requesting from the state.
Oh, sure.
Specifically say, this is what we're doing, so within the host community agreement.
Yep.
Because otherwise, this host community agreement allows you to go to the state and pretty much request any license you want, to some degree.
If I may, Mr. Chair, if you look at the third whereas on that very first page, it's where we define the facility. I think we do a pretty good job.
So it's a cultivation outdoor.
Right, but we can describe the license type there too. It's probably a good place for that.
Yeah. Now, does outdoor itself have different tiers of size?
Cultivation has different tiers, whether it's indoor or outdoor.
Okay, so that's more, I guess what we're saying is by referencing the tier you're requesting, so we understand that this is the max limit that you're asking for, so that's all we as a community are supporting or not fighting, however we want to use this term anymore.
That's fair. The way we describe that, that could be a tier 1, it could be a tier 5. If we clarify what we're, the specific license type and cultivation type, if that would give you comfort, and that's a great place to put it.
It definitely fits for me, because if you fail that, you fail our host community agreement, we go to the state and say, pull their license.
Sure.
And the state will do it anyway, because they would think you undermined us, and they don't want that process happening. Do you have any other thoughts, Charlie?
No, not right at the moment.
Okay. If I'm correct, and I'll actually rely on you to actually answer this, but I only bring it up because I know it was brought up at some other meetings. Outside of what I believe was a typo in the proposed zoning bylaw regarding outdoor cultivation, I believe you have previously stated that what you're proposing was going to fit within all of the existing guidelines that the planning board was proposing for outdoor cultivation.
Yes.
Except the one typo was on a separate paragraph that said all marijuana facilities will be housed indoors, which obviously is a slight typo from allowing an outdoor cultivation site. It just didn't provide the right caveat or exception or exemption to make sure that it didn't blanket statement it. But I believe, and like I said, your review of what they proposed, you fit everything but that one criteria of everything has to happen indoors?
Yep.
Okay.
I mean, if I could expound on that a little bit, one of the reasons that we decided to come forward when we did is that we spent a lot of time looking at your proposed regulations and yours, and the substance of both documents. We looked at it and we said, we can do this. We can live within these guidelines. And as I've said in other meetings, my hope this summer is that with some minor alterations that you guys have your subcommittee working on, that both of these documents will be approved by the town, because I think if they're not, then this town could be subject to sort of outside entrepreneurs who are not interested in being good neighbors. I mean, with the folks at CPC Barry and with us, if you have just those two HCAs to start, you gave your HCAs to people with connections to Barry. And I think if the bylaws don't pass this last time around, marijuana will still be legal here, but it'll be on a case-by-case basis, and that'll be attractive to people that aren't necessarily connected to Barry. That's my concern.
No, that's a good point.
And, you know, my hope is that in June, we will have negotiated and that maybe our presence will be a good thing in getting the bylaws passed.
I know we'd like to set up ground that's a little less wet to do a site visit, just to
Yeah, sure.
Have you thought about doing one, if I may, have you thought about doing one of those drone overview things so you could present that to other people?
Yeah, I actually have a friend who's big into drones, and
Yeah.
he's offered to do that.
Picture's worth 1,000 words.
Yeah.
I mean, the drawings are all right, but looking at one of those, would give people a much better idea how recluse this area is.
It's way out there. You're gonna need to bring your muck boots, even when it's dry.
For a rent-a-gator.
Do we have any other questions tonight? Yes, John.
It would seem to me that this 2.3 acres is gonna generate somewhere between $2 and $4 million in gross revenues, which is a great agricultural product.
It very well could.
And that raises a question, would you be able, or would you be precluded from investing in any other venture within Massachusetts? Not as an owner, but as an investor.
You mean within the marijuana industry?
Yes, within that, yes.
So I would, based on the size of the license we're asking for, in other words, that 2.3 acres, that 100,000 square feet, that's the largest canopy area you're allowed.
Right.
Okay, there isn't anything bigger than that.
Right.
So we would not be allowed another cultivation license. My attorney could give you more detail, but there is a maximum. You can have licenses in more than one aspect of the industry.
Right.
I currently don't have any plans to do that.
Like testing or
Yeah.
cultivating or retail sale or any of that.
I have zero interest in being a retailer. Not only in Barry, but anywhere. People elsewhere in the industry will tell you that the people that are vertically integrated and own retail establishments, they're gonna make the bulk of the money from this industry. But retailing is just not something I wanna get involved in.
Yes, Jeff.
My question was, would you be precluded from investing in any other marijuana operations in Massachusetts?
I believe the answer is no.
You would not be precluded. Okay. Thank
Sorry, sir, to ramble.
All right. One last offer. Anybody out there have anything else to say? Again, we will have another public hearing, so you can think about it and come back, but the next public hearing hopefully is after we've gone through a little bit more level of negotiation, clarification, and actually looking at a potential final HCA draft that we want to tell the town, this is what we're thinking, this is what. So between now and at least, say, 2 weeks from now, if you think of something, write into the town administrator's office or to the Board of Selectmen to provide your comments. We can incorporate that as we try to just finalize the details of this. Sam, you had one more thing you'd ask?
Yeah, I just wanted to know, you said you were gonna wholesale it, would you just be growing it and cutting it like a Christmas tree and shipping it out? Is that what you're speaking about?
No. You do have to let it dry. And within the 5 to 8 acres that would be fenced off, there would be probably 2, maybe 3 small buildings, one specifically as a place for the marijuana to dry, and the others would be to basically store equipment.
And then you'd have crews to come in and move it from the drying stage into a truck? Is that
So, during the life cycle, during the growing season, we're gonna need essentially farm hands. When the product is sold and moved off-site, again, I'll defer to my attorney to clarify if I'm getting this wrong, but the state allows you 2 different ways to do that. If you're a cultivator or a producer, you can move your product in vehicles owned by your company. The alternative is there are licenses available for people who only transport from one type of business to another. My inclination at this point, if you're asking Sam what happens when we're done, the product is sold and we need to move it, my inclination at this point would be to have professionals do it, hire people to do it, and not have that operation be a part of my business. And for me, that falls under security. I mean, the state regulations are super strict about manifests and like everything involved with marijuana is tracked from seed to sale. And to transport it and hit all those marks and do it safely and do it the way the state wants you to do it takes a certain level of expertise, which I think some entrepreneurs are trying to take that on themselves. At least initially, I think I would hire a private security contractor to do that for me.
Thanks.
Sure.
Thank you.
Yes, Charlie.
I just have a question about drying. When we grew up, there were tobacco sheds all over the place for drying tobacco that they made around here. Is that going to be something similar?
Similar but more sophisticated.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
Times have changed.
Yeah, pretty much.
That is all, just a simple question.
That's the best answer I got.
Okay. Works for me.
I guess a little bit based on what Sam said, just a better level of clarification. I don't know if that's the right way of putting it either. It's just taking the same concept and coming at it maybe a little different angle. The license that you're requesting from the state allows you to plant and get to what level of the processing or manufacturing?
So,
not saying you'll do it, but how
No,
far
no,
does it allow you to go?
I understand, and again, my attorney will correct me if I'm wrong, but a cultivator's license, you grow the plants, but you have to harvest them and prep them for further sale. So
the flower of the plant is what people that cultivate are buying. And so that needs to be harvested, it needs to be trimmed, it needs to be allowed to dry out, and it needs to be packaged. And the state sort of, that comes under cultivating. Processing would be taking the plants and distilling things out of them. THC, CBD, terpenes.
Is that a different license?
It is a completely different license,
Okay.
yeah. And
Product manufacturer.
And we are not seeking that license.
Okay, so processing to a certain level of raw material
Yep.
is actually part of cultivation, where in other words, the flower goes here, the stalks go here.
It's about to the level.
But once you start trying to take that and break it into smaller parts, you're jumping into another license category.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
And I think as you had stated, and also by putting that license description in here, we'll be more certain that that is all that's being requested when they go in front of the state. So, sounds like that's all they're looking to do, is get to the point of break the plan into its certain parts and then send it where the state tells me I can't.
Correct.
Okay. Do you have anything, Charlie?
No, I do not.
All right, I would like to close the item this time around. If anybody has any further questions or comments or come up with something, just please send it through the town administrator's office. He'll get it to the board members. We'll review it before we get into the next steps of finalizing the host community agreement. Once we're more comfortable we're at that level, I do believe we're going to want to work with the planning board a little bit just to see what their thoughts are. So I don't expect in 2 weeks we're going to be trying to tell you, oh, we got it, let's sign it. But we did set a timetable to try to keep this moving. But we need to listen to the planning board, because just because we set a schedule doesn't mean it fits either their schedule or even potentially their access to the site. They want to do a walkthrough. Well, if it's still frozen, muddy, whatever it is, we got to listen to what they're saying and why they're asking. So I don't want to make any commitment to that timetable, but at a minimum, it's going to be 2 weeks because of the public hearing notice. All right. Thank you very much, gentlemen. I appreciate you coming.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Got it. All right. The next item would be an update from the 9/11 committee.
This is the hot seat, I'm gonna sit over there. Okay, get one,
Thank you.
please.
Is this a request to revise it?
Yeah. Yeah, telecast area.
Okay.
Some of the wording in this, the size of the original charge was 7 members, and it was brought up to 10 members through the approval of the selectmen, but it was never, the draft changes, the changes were never signed off on. So you can see some of the wording on how it was written up originally. It was a little bit different, so that it would be honoring both the EMS, police department, and fire department, as well as the veterans who are currently serving in the global war on terrorism. And down here at 5, you can see where it brings it up to 10 members. And of course, once again, that any members that were approved have to be approved by the selectmen before they can be appointed to the board. I think you can see what the rest was
written up, it's very easy to understand what the changes were. So presently,
Is the bold just to indicate changes? Or is the bold for certain reasons?
because there was some wording changes. The original charge here that was finalized is written up also. That I have here. I don't know if you want to make copies to recognize the differences. The committee basically was saying the rewording of the Board of Selectmen's agreement to wish to delegate the responsibilities of developing the North Park, monument in North Park, to be known as the Global War on Terrorism. I don't think that was in there originally. I think it was just a 9/11 Memorial Development Committee that would be looking into getting things in place for what we were going to do. So what we have right now is the more finite charge, okay, just so that you guys can be, if somebody approaches you and says, well, I don't understand what's going on with this committee, these little changes that were brought up are important. I believe it's what we needed to do. And because of the previous wording of the charge that you guys approved, bringing the membership from 7 up to 10, and some of the importance of the changes were to make sure that there was a member from the fire department, a member from the police department, emergency services, members from the military forces, historical society, myself as the veterans agent, and the community at large, who we now have everybody in place because we got the approval. And I think this is, I'm not sure where the statement was made that the development of a 9/11 memorial and the global war on terrorism, whether it was just a 9/11 memorial at that time. So the wording we needed to put in there to cover both places. So that when we bring you proposals, we need to bring you 2 proposals, one for North Park and one for the Brewer Building complex. Okay?
Okay.
And presently, what's occurring right now with the committee, we reorganized a little bit. Didn't change the approach of what we're trying to do or anything. Just it needed to be done.
How did you reorganize?
With the chairman and the second vice chairman. Secretary was replaced, and that's it. Okay. So presently we've met. We had a little stalemate over the summer, and we got back into it in December, and we have progressed considerably since we've started. As the project entails getting 5 pillars to represent the 3 for the Brewer Building and 2 for North Park. We have not acquired them. We have gotten permission to be able to acquire them at no cost to the committee or the town. We have a representative from the town who is willing to work on these pieces to make them acceptable to be put in as a memorial. And we have a couple of proposals on how they're going to look. One was brought in, and that proposal was brought up for the police department, for the Brewer building, and it was noted that it would not be structurally safe. So we presently have Athol Granite Works, Mr. Verock. He is coming up with a different design to make it appropriate and yet safe. All right? And we have design for North Park, tentative design, but on Thursday we're going to meet with Mr. Jason Benoit to have him look at the proposal so that we can bring it to you guys and say, yeah, we can do it. It's a viable thing to do.
How much of this do you have on paper? So you can show us what the initial concepts and locations are.
Dennis has, well, the only location that we're having trouble with, we haven't got into yet, is on North Park because of the surface. We got to figure out what area exactly we're going to put it. Down at the Brewer building, it's that if you look at the building from the road, there's a protrusion on the parking lot with like a curbing, and it was brought up and discussed with town DPW and sewer department, just to make sure that where we were going to put it was not going to interfere with anything, storm drains or water lines or underground electrical lines. And Dennis should have something.
That's the North Common tentative area. Grainy look. The granite pillars are the same pillars that are on the North Commons fencing.
Okay, yeah.
Mr. Benoit will look at the ones that have been given to us to pick out which ones are the best that are there, because there's multiple ones of these. Structurally, how deep does it have to be in the ground, so that would determine how long they are. He would square them up. We're still in the process of discussing amongst us on the board how much detail would be on these, and we've discussed at length the pattern on which these would be on the common as far as being true to the Twin Towers and how they were. I mean, people look at them and think they were side by side. They actually weren't. They were kind of offset from each other and turned a little. So we want to replicate that. This antenna will be the steel that came from underneath the Twin Tower.
I remember you.
It'll be incorporated on the North Common one, and on the Brewer building one, the other part of the steel will be used on that one. So,
are you envisioning almost like mirror monuments? So like,
no.
Okay.
They'll be different.
No, because down at the Brewer complex, there's going to be 3 pillars.
Oh.
They represent police, fire, and EMS.
Okay.
This is the actual twin. If you drive by.
See, the twin, those.
Yeah, I know what you're saying.
The 3 throws it off and it doesn't really connect to the towers anymore.
It does with the metal. That's metal from the tower. This, visually, looking at it, you're gonna know right away what that is.
Right, but I thought you just said there's going to be 3 pillars down at the Brewer building.
Yes, there will. one representing the police, one representing the fire, one, but with the rail from that, we're gonna incorporate it into the three pillars. And that's respectfully thinking that each department deserves their own little monument. And these are not gonna be obtrusive, they're not gonna be 20 feet tall, they're just gonna be equally tall as the rest of the monuments.
So they won't.
That was the criteria that we all agreed on, and we were told would be the smart thing to do.
More specific, you mean to the North Common one?
Yes,
Because
yes.
that has something to reference, I got you.
There is a plane there, you can see
Yeah.
that they're all working, except for the
center.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm
Okay.
looking on here, I have some photos, but if you're ever inclined, the town of Ware's Fire Department, you know, the big brick building across from the Cumberland Farms on 32 there? Look on their front lawn. They've got pieces of metal from over there that are incorporated in a couple of 3 different memorials over there. I've got pictures, I'm just trying to find them, but going there and looking at them would do more justice than looking at a picture. And if, I don't know if Tony wants to explain or get into some of the like money-raising aspect of bricks and whatnot we're gonna do, that like the paid brick.
I think when we get an idea what we can bring back to you guys, we had some thoughts, and we talked about having that in place, but then having a brick walkway made up and a brick patio around it, so that people can purchase bricks to have their loved ones or their named veterans engraved in it. It's similar to what happened at the library.
Yeah, okay, right.
Okay, so we're thinking in that direction that, we basically know how much it costs per brick, because Lester was involved in that. Unfortunately, Lester couldn't make it tonight, but not very expensive. We were also discussing the fact that the Berry Wool, the last Berry Wool building is coming down, okay? And a couple of the guys, including Dennis, have talked to them to see if we could get some of those bricks to incorporate into the park as another memento park. And as somebody purchases a brick, we can remove that brick. So we could set up our perimeter with the bricking from the Berry Wool, and as a cost-saving measure, okay, as they're purchased, we'll remove one and put one in. So fundraising, we haven't got to that point yet, because we haven't really, figured out how many square feet of cement we need or whatever else,
Hard to identify the goal to ask for.
Right, but I think the biggest thing right now is getting the granite. And once we get it into a place where we can do something with it, Mr. Murphy over here is part of our committee. He is bringing a proposal up to the school to see if there's a group of kids want to get involved with what we're going to put on the stones. Now, the proposal is a wording, okay? It has nothing to do with the veterans. What we're thinking of is there's 4 sides to this platform that the pillars are going to be in. We're going to have representing the 4 armed forces. And the Coast Guard will find its niche somewhere.
Understood.
When there's, shallow water in the North Common there, that'll be the coast.
That will be very nice.
I'll take that as a rhetorical sort of.
Yeah, that's not
Okay.
I got the Navy to back me up. So that's it.
Technically, isn't that where the Air Force and the Marines came from? It all started at the Navy?
Yeah, right. Yeah, but the Army will contest to that. They'll fight you on that
You
one.
get in trouble for saying things.
I'm just lucky enough to come from an Air Force family, so I really have no home. Just, we moved a lot.
So,
Okay.
that's what we got for you.
All right. What I would like to do is just review this, we'll compare it to the original, just
Yep.
get an idea. I know that when we first wrote this, personally, I was trying to be real involved with the drafting of it. It was something that meant something to me. It was also something where, and I'll admit, it's could just be me for lack of knowing. But when you look around and you look at monuments and everything, you see a lot of military, you see very little contributing public safety, fire, EMS. So when I was working on this, my real focus was, what are we going to do for those three civilian agencies, police, fire, EMS? But we wanted to make sure we could give the footnote because we knew they were following things from 9/11. But 9/11 was that day.
Yep.
Military was doing nothing that day other than crying like the rest of us. They immediately acted probably within 30 seconds upon the call. They were up in the air chasing the, I'm not saying they didn't do anything, because I know there's more to the military than that. But to me, it was like the nightmare was what's happened on the grounds in New York and who's there. And it wasn't a military base, it was every fire department, police station, and every volunteer and everybody else. And so that's where I was coming from. And I'm okay with the development of pulling in a separate monument for the military and the concept. But there was a part of me like, it felt like it was almost a distraction. And it wasn't getting the 9/11 monument down at the public safety building and going. It led to a point of, well, we need a sister one. And now the North Common. And then I felt like there for a little while, everything went to, what are we going to do for the North Common? Because the last update was, we got 5 days to request a grant that might help fund a military monument, but not a public safety monument. And we got a place for granite up north, and, well, not north, but
Yeah.
what, Haas Hill or whatever.
Yeah, great.
So I felt like, okay, I'm not against that, but this isn't anywhere where I thought we were going with this committee.
Great.
So I just would like a little update on, were we on the same page or did I misunderstand? That's, I guess, is where I'm at, is like, maybe because from what I recall, that looks like in the revised draft you're asking, you're trying to say that the military monument is more important because you made it huge and bold to say, hey, military, when I was like, well, we already said military
that
just above it.
No, that was the change.
And that's why I was confused by, I was asking the
That's
bold,
okay.
because when I first read this, I was like,
Yep.
you're totally changing what I thought the intent of the charge originally was.
Mr. Chairman, if I'm not mistaken, those changes were submitted to you before and the Board of Selectmen failed to sign them.
You are mistaken. This was never submitted to me before. Did it make it to someone else? I don't know, but I never received this, nor did we discuss it in a meeting to vote on it.
Was the 7, when it was originally on the 7 members, was that one ever voted on?
That was the only one that was voted
Final?
on. I mean, that goes back to Heather.
This one.
That was the only time we voted on a charge that I know of related to this.
Yeah, that's the one that says final located.
Well, this is the original, correct?
Right.
Says on the top final.
Yep. Yep. This is the one I remember.
Okay.
And I believe that is the only one that exists. Nothing else that you may have thought, or nothing else has come before the board and been voted on to change that charge. So I don't know how many members you believe you have right now, but technically you only have 7. So if you have more that you believe that should got voted on, we're gonna have to start picking them off and starting over. Now, don't get me wrong, we're not gonna say, just because there's 7 voting members doesn't mean you can't have 50 people in town helping you accomplish this goal. I'm not trying to say that people can't be involved. But we do have to revisit this before we can say you have more than 7 members officially. And you presented it, so I'm not saying that by the next meeting, you won't have the ability to have 10 members. But I'll let Charlie jump in now. Do you recall any changes to this charge since you and I?
I don't. I'm not saying there weren't, but given all the paperwork that comes by us, but I don't recall it.
No, I remember, like, recently, obviously, Colleen left. So I thought that opened a spot, and I thought that's when you brought Scott in. So as Colleen left, Scott, so to us, we were just saying, you're maintaining the same number of memberships, but yeah, someone left, someone came in. We weren't presented with anybody else that applied to be on it, so it wasn't like we were debating. We just said, okay, Scott wants to be on it, let him be on it. And I think previously you had that happen once or twice before. Someone was on and then left. I think once. Someone may have left and then been replaced with someone.
That was me.
Okay.
But I'm not positive, but I believe your website, our charge says 10 on your website.
I could look it up right now.
Okay.
Thank you.
We may need to
I
revisit
believe
that
it
then.
does. I printed it
Okay.
out.
I'm on.
We need to see what we have on file also that's been signed. Because that will help us definitely get back to what's the last signed one, because it's a lot harder to chase meeting minutes to figure out what agenda got a vote and what was voted on.
May I make a point?
Yes, sir.
Yep.
And this is in no way trying to toot my own horn. Don't misunderstand me. I'd come up with an idea acquiring metal from the Twin Towers. A few times during those requests, we weren't given it. They'd only give out so much at a time. Finally, there was one last push for them to give out the remaining pieces. The letters that I had written to the New Jersey Port Authority, who had jurisdiction of those artifacts, in the letters, and I have the letter approved by the former Board of Selectmen, the wording was completely for the Barry North Common Iraq and Afghanistan conflict. At no point was it including a 9/11 memorial for the Brewer building, because that wasn't even on paper yet. It then, over time, morphed into two separate memorials, hence why one artifact would go to the Brewer building memorial and the other up here. And that was to appease the reasons the New Jersey Port Authority granted us, the town, those artifacts, which took almost an act of Congress to get those. It was a really drawn-out legal process. And that will answer the question, if anybody ever has it, how did it turn into two separate memorials? One was to incorporate the 9/11 people, as you said, and the other was the people who were in service that day till right now. It hasn't ended, so all those names of those people that were from Barry, that lived in Barry, that were a resident of Barry when they enlisted, that memorial honors those people. So if anybody ever had a question of that, the original intent was only for the North Common. It then morphed into incorporate both, and I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I think it's a good thing, because the Brewer building wasn't there before. So I think it, because of that North Common being a Veterans Park, that's why that military one is for that, and the 9/11 appropriately at the EMS building. It just makes sense.
And exactly, and I know that, again, from my perspective, the timing of this also was the timing of the Brewer building being built, or designed, I think. They had maybe just started breaking ground, I forget at that time, but it was very close to that same process. And I do recall talking to you, Dennis, about your efforts to get the rails.
Took a long time.
And I recognize at that time there was a lot of military reasoning. And I'll have to admit, I cannot explain why the concept of putting this monument at the public safety building initiated.
I can answer that.
Okay.
When the
Because when it came up, that's where all of a sudden I got the, I'm sorry, I don't want to cut you off like that, but that's what led me to say that would be great, because you never see this. Like, we see military monuments everywhere. This would be great. But
prior to the Brewer building coming into play in this, you've got multiple people from this town that are on the police, on the fire, and on EMS that also served.
Yeah.
So once the charge was formed by the select board, the committee was picked, we met, and that's when it was decided at the first meeting to incorporate both. And it's only fair.
no, it makes sense.
Yeah.
Now it's just, can we, I guess the question comes down to, is this something where, as a group, as the committee is presented, is it better to keep it one group hitting two monuments, or to draw a line and say half the group or half the group? I'm just curious.
Well, at this stage of the game, I think we're mindset of taking care of both of them.
Okay.
So, you know, if you split them up, then it's gonna be back to square one.
Okay. And that's why I'm asking, because it depends on how far you got, the coordination of the two. Because when you didn't say they were like mirror images, I was like, well, I didn't know how much that had to be, so I was just catching on.
It's a very distinct difference.
Okay.
One, you know that's military, that's on the North Common. In front of the Brewer building, you know that's EMS.
Because it's gonna be plaques on those
To represent each
for each
branch.
department, for each branch.
And having guys on the, and women, there was a woman on the board, she had to resign for commitments for work and family, was on the rescue squad. Charlie, he represents that, he also was a police officer, and he's also a veteran. He's got a triple role on that, and as the other members, you know, so we've got no problem doing them both. I mean, I don't think they'll be done simultaneously and we won't have them both done at the same time. You may concentrate, I'm not gonna speak out of turn here, and there is no value of importance, but we're more geared towards the North Common because it's a smaller monument. And the other one is taking more because of the drawback.
Can I mention something?
Yes, sure.
We submitted a plan for the monument, the public safety building. The person at Athol Granite Works said it was very unstable and he would come up with some better design for us. We're waiting to see that better, it's gonna be, looks the same, but it's gonna be probably a little bit thicker or a little bit, you know, chunkier or something. So that's what we're waiting on in that one.
And in the meantime, we're still going forward with what we can.
Acquiring all the material that we need and get things lined up so that once we get you guys a copy of our proposal, and once we figure out the cost for installing them, then it's good to go. I mean, it's going to happen.
Yes.
I just wanted to say that, you know, I've been a member of this committee since its inception, and as a representative of the police department and a veteran of the War on Terror, from the beginning, a combination monument that would incorporate both military and police, fire, and EMS would have been trying to bite off too much. So that's why in the beginning, we decided that it'd probably be better to honor military veterans at North Park, which is the military park, and then public safety at the public safety building. So, I mean, that's just my 2 cents from somebody that's been on it from the beginning. So.
And we all agree. And we're trying to use as much.
How's the meetings and incorporation of all the memberships? Is that working out?
Yes.
Communication's working?
Yes.
It was stagnant for a little while, but
We've, because we reorganized a little bit, things are happening a lot more often. We're meeting at least once a month. And this, like I said, this Thursday, we're meeting with Mr. Benoit, which is a good thing, because then we'll have more that we can bring back to you guys. We plan to have a meeting every month, and as we leave, we have certain things we have to accomplish and bring them back for the next committee meeting. It's the only way it's going to get done. Like we said, it went a little stagnant, and things had to change. So we changed them.
You have anything else, Charlie?
No, I don't.
Well, I really appreciate you guys taking the time to provide an update, all of you guys coming out. It makes a difference. It's not easy, and a lot of us don't have the time to try to catch up to your meeting. So when you post a meeting or something, for all I know, it's at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and don't take this the wrong way, but there's no way, no problem getting that. I just don't have enough paid time off to come and attend one of those.
we got some vacancies on the board if you got time.
If I get time, there's other issues going on in my life. But thank you very much.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you. Thank you, Dennis.
You're welcome.
Thank you, sir. We're gonna get into an executive session thing with them. So when it happens, we'll properly make the announcement, but yeah, there's no. Actually, I'll allow the 4 of you, since everybody else ran. Before we get into the next stuff, we will open it just for general public comment. Do you have something generally you'd like to bring up at the moment that wasn't on the agenda?
I got a question.
Yes, Claire.
Given the permission for the beer and wine at the store,
Yeah.
does that up us on our licenses?
It will. It'll allow a second potential retail license per state law.
It ups us for the marijuana.
What do you mean?
We'll up it to 2 stores, right?
To clarify, right now, there's no regulation. There's just proposed bylaws that never got passed. But the proposed bylaw was to meet the state minimum requirement of 1 retail marijuana license must be provided to a town that allows marijuana retail sales equal to 20% of the off-premises liquor licenses you issue. We currently have 5, which means we are mandated to allow at least 1 marijuana retail license. Just approving this other one that now puts alcohol into the grocery store makes it 6. So to meet a minimum of 20%, we have to be 2, because you can't provide a fraction of a license. Because 20% of 6 is greater than 1 out of 5.
So it's a marijuana store facility, right? Is that what it is?
What
I get confused.
the state law is specifically relating to marijuana retail sales licenses.
Is that a different issue?
By approving that off-premise alcohol, we went from previously we had only issued 5 off-premise alcohol sales Yeah, licenses.
Yeah.
What does off premises mean?
Package store. In other words, you're not able to drink it on premises when you buy
Oh, I
it. So
see.
it's not a restaurant, it's not,
Yeah.
so it's gotta be a package store.
Haymakers, it wouldn't qualify that if they got
Correct.
a license.
Yeah.
It only qualifies for the places like
Yeah.
Brousseau's, Quabbin Liquor, Marketplace,
So
what's
we
the
had five
store down on
up
Main
till
Street
tonight.
in
So
Burberry?
Now we
Yeah.
have 6.
Are you happy about that?
So those are,
No, because now it allows 2 retail stores, right?
it does, but here's the confusion that I think everybody
Think how
gets.
much money
If a
the
retail
town
store
Barry
opened
makes.
in Barry, it would be about as big as Barry Pharmacy, and the people coming to that door would be about the number of people going to Barry Pharmacy. Why? Because you already have Gardner open, you already have Leicester open, you already have places that have bigger stores. And the inrush to Gardner is so much smaller than the inrush to Leicester because there's already competition out in the market. By the time somebody came to Barry and thought they might want to open one, you've already got 2 towns over in every direction, already either requesting the license or already approved and open.
So Gardner.
What is
has
it,
a
Ware or
Yeah.
West Brookfield?
Yeah, last week or so.
So I mean, if you go south, north, or east, you're already running into one that's already open or just about to open.
Well, there
So
was-
who from Barry, if you open, are they gonna be racing to Barry to buy from?
There was a time in 1950 when there was a gas station on every corner. And they all made money, right, Helen?
Well, right,
that's what we
but
need
what
to
I'm
bring
saying
to
is,
Barry.
it
That's a
may
gas
still be
station.
successful, but you're not drawing everybody from the state here anymore, because you've already got the other
You're not
stores.
gonna have people from Gardner coming.
Why doesn't somebody?
You're serving pretty much your local community at that point.
Oh, we have that one up.
Because who in Gardner is gonna wanna come to Barry to buy? Unless they're afraid that someone's gonna see them walking in the door. That's, you know what I mean, it's,
Yeah, see?
Very good.
so I think by the time someone even asks us to build one here in town, it's not gonna have the same impact if it actually makes it through the process. Because we still need to have a host community agreement. Just because we're required to allow it, doesn't mean we're required to sign a host community agreement for them to even get the state licensure.
Is that gonna be on the warrant for the annual meeting?
We can't prohibit it under zoning bylaws,
That's up to the
but we
selectmen.
don't have to agree to the host community agreement.
Okay, and
I know.
then if you don't agree to the host, it wouldn't come through.
That would be-
Without a host, it can't get the state license. Now, I haven't seen it yet,
Yeah.
but I wouldn't be surprised at some point if a town really just kept saying no to the host community agreement. But the members of the town had gone through all the steps to say that the selectmen cannot be the reason. It needs a town vote to prohibit it. They could work it, I'm sure, at some legal capacity eventually to force the Board of Selectmen to come to an agreement of some nature. It'd be a legal battle. I don't see it happening quickly, and I don't see any company saying it's worth that fight if they can just go 2 towns over and get the community agreement that allows them to do what they want.
Is it gonna be on the warrant for the annual meeting?
The bylaws?
Retail store? A retail store, or does it have to wait till you get the host agreement? Are you talking
Actually, it
like next year?
cannot go on a town meeting warrant. The state has already said, once the town has already voted, so you cannot give the town the authority to approve or disapprove. It has to go through your Board of Selectmen.
Oh, I see.
The only thing you can do is the bylaws, which.
The bylaws that build the
Stipulate
box
the
they can work
warrants.
within, and then the Board of
They've gotta
Selectmen through the
work
host
within
community
those
agreement.
bylaws.
Is the current state that Barry is in. It doesn't apply to every municipality because it depends on the municipality's voting history.
I think you should get a gas station in town. They would be able to really compete.
I think Barry Pharmacy would be the ideal one to ask for it. Because then you know you're focusing on
The one
medicinal marijuana as a retail, and if they want recreational, they can go to Gardner or wherever else. And now it's, I'm going for my medicine. Nobody even has to worry about what you're asking for, because you're going to a pharmacy. But I doubt that the state would even allow that, because they probably wouldn't know how to divide up the back room to say what's what. And you know what I mean? I bet there's some regulation that makes it harder for them to do that. And I have no clue if they're actually interested, because who knows what other federal regulations get involved and tighten up their knot on. Right.
Are there any other people that are gonna be following Mr. Egan's? Is it Dr. Egan?
It's Dr. Egan. He's an
Dr.
emergency room
Egan's-
doctor.
Right, Dr. Egan's footsteps is a trailblazer, him and maybe Dean or somebody, I don't know who's involved. There's a lot of farmland in Barry.
I've had nobody talk to me about
$3
it.
million an acre. Charlie, you worked on a farm. Is that a pretty good crop, 3 million for 2
Yep.
acres?
Yep.
Yeah. But nobody has come to the fore yet.
Dr. Egan is the only one I've heard since CPC came to us. Thank you, Ellie.
Yeah, we'll see ya, huh?
Elliot,
Yeah.
you got my stuff?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
I responded, but for some reason, it didn't,
Yeah.
it said it was being held, but I did receive your photo and your.
Okay, just to let you know, though, we're gonna go into, make a motion to go into executive session to discuss, Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A, Exemption 2, to discuss strategy with respect to the fire chief's contract.
Second.
When this executive session is over and we exit executive session, we will be going into open session, but not to do further business, but just to close the meeting for the night.
Did you notice that the deputy chief closed the door?
Yeah, but he opened it again too.
It's a good point, though. Do you mind closing it for us, though? Now that we've actually, I appreciate it, Jack.
Well, you know, after getting
No, it's a good point, because I did mention at the last meeting, and
Okay.
thank you.